Hello there! Welcome back to Gizor's Games. We're doing fuel engines. We're going to try and speed run from basics through to advanced, as well as, things to avoid when designing fuel engines. And then I'm going to share a bunch of engines that I designed myself with you guys. So, buckle in for the ride, and we're going to go. Alright, first thing you want to do is you want to go into your menu and you want to grab yourself a fuel engine generator. You got the engine generator. You can change it to, charge batteries. You can change the priority. You can change the maximum RPMs. You got all sorts of useful information down here. Now, you also have cylinders. You can see the cylinder's temperature, the power material, and also the things that are giving a boost to power. You also have the output graph, which shows you the output graph and the max RPM and the current RPM. Alright, now let's go into building an engine. First of all, you can attach a cylinder straight to this engine, but most of the time you're not going to want to. You're going to want a little extra power than 15. You're going to put down a cylinder, and you're going to put down 2 cylinders. Now you've got an engine, it's got some performance metrics here. You got 18 power up here, 306 max, and power per volume for 4.6. The quickest way to improve that is to, decrease the temperature of the cylinders. So to decrease the temperature of the cylinders will increase power output and your power per material. And there you go. Now each one's producing 15 power, and it's exhausting the engines, cooling them down so they have better power performance. Alright, now you want to increase the power production because, 15 per cylinder isn't that great. So you're going to add a carburetor. Carburetors add quite a bit of power. So you add a couple of those on right there. And we're going to, whoops. There we go. You add a couple of those on and you got, plus 135 power. That's a decent amount. The power material is 540, which is basic for all the things that increase power, cylinders, injectors, and carburetors. But the power per material, because of the temperature, it's been decreased. But its power per volume has increased quite a bit, right? Now you go from there. You want to increase the efficiency a little bit, so you add a supercharger. You add a couple superchargers. There you go. You've added a couple superchargers. You've increased the low-end power per material efficiency. That's great. It also adds extra power, so your power per volume at the low end has also increased. But the top end suffers. So you want to increase the power per volume at the top end. So you add a couple of turbochargers. Maybe we'll add them the other way. You add yourself a couple of turbochargers, and away you go. You've added a couple of turbochargers. The top end's gone up, and the bottom end, because you already got the superchargers. But, your power per volume suffers because, well, these things are 2 blocks instead of 1 blocks of the superchargers. So, power density, not so great. Now that you've done that, maybe you want to really increase the power output, and so you add some injectors. And then you see that, your power per material has suffered quite a bit for that increased in power per volume. Often it'll pay off for itself. It doesn't really change that too much. Some engines are really efficient and some aren't. So those are all the basic things. And after you've done this, you've ran out of places to hook up exhaust to cool down your engine. Say you got this engine here. The cylinder's really hot and you want to cool it down so it has better power per material, and so you just add a couple radiators onto the crankshaft. You can add the radiators either onto the crankshaft or the cylinder, but you cannot add it onto adapters, which adapters just extend out the crankshaft by 1 in whatever direction you attach them to. Alrighty, that's everything. That's the basics. That's all you need to know about engines, the basics, okay? Now we're going to move on to some very common mistakes. So when you're designing an engine, I built that wrong. Hello. Now don't do that. Don't connect your crankshafts to the pointy bits. Connect it to the cylinders. Alright, and then you go from here and take some cylinders. Whoops. I didn't put enough crankshafts on here. So a couple of crankshafts like that. So if you take a carburetor, don't put it like this. This is only being powered by, this is only adding power to one cylinder. See, now it's adding two maximum power plus 27. It's adding power to 2 cylinders. This does not attach doesn't attach a cylinder. Top of carburetors does not attach cylinders. And the inverse is true for anything you want to attach to the carburetor. It doesn't attach to the bottom. So don't do either of those mistakes, and you'll be fine. The last thing that you got to be aware of is if you got some adapters, you can't attach it. These don't attach. Radiators do not attach adapters. That's all you need to look out for. I've made those mistakes a bazillion times when designing engines and wondered why engines weren't performing very well. And that was why, because I made one of those couple of mistakes. Now that we've done that, let's go to the advanced techniques for designing engines and things to understand. So I got this little setup here, and this is just going to show you chained engines. So chained engines here, you've got exhaust being shared between two engines, and you've got, you know, these carburetors and things. And you can see how this lights up. These superchargers light up, but they don't light up here. Superchargers aren't shared between engines. You can see here 1 turbo and 2 superchargers. This has nothing. Has no superchargers. So you cannot share superchargers between engines. So chained engines cannot share superchargers. The only thing they can share is exhaust and turbos. So you can chain engines. If you have unused exhaust from one engine, you can take that unused exhaust and transfer it to a turbo on a different engine if you don't have enough room on your current engine for that exhaust. So you can do some advanced builds with that are extremely extraordinary and very efficient and just have great power production across all RPMs. The other advanced thing has to do with cylinder temperature. When you have a burst load, this cylinder gives you extra efficiency, which is a beautiful thing. Remember this thing here? These don't like burst loads because they're going to be less efficient at the low end. If you have a burst load, sure, they're going to be more efficient at the top end, but only for like a couple seconds when you have that load from either particle cannons or rail guns. That's it. That's the only time you're going to have it. So turbo engines aren't the end-all to be-all of engines. There's many reasons why you choose a different engine. You know, for instance, the supercharger engine. If you want a super efficient engine, especially on the low end and fairly decent power density, why not go for a supercharger engine? Look at this one. This is on Scott's engine platform. This is a good engine. It's got 3K, 20 power per volume. It's about half the density of like a turbo, but you've got all that efficiency. You know, you can go up to 800 at 50%, and you're getting 4K out of this. Like it's 31.3, but you got 800 efficiency. That's unrivaled by turbos for efficiency. And its density isn't that much lower. So, you know, you can have different choices, basically. They're all basically equivalent and slightly better at one thing or another. I mean, there is a king for density. King of density is injectors. As far as injectors go, 120 is decent. You can get up to like 130, 140 depending on how you design the injector engines for power density. Your efficiency might suffer, but you can get really high density injector engines. So that's just an example. Alright, we're going to move on to, now that we've covered all that, we're going to go on to some engines I've designed. So I wanted to make a combine engine. Here's my first attempt at that. I'm going to tell you right now, it's not that great. Even the turbo one is better. So I think it might have a little bit better power density at the low end, but the efficiency wise, the turbo beats this entirely. This is the first combine. This is what I call the flat combine. It's the first one I designed. The only upside of this one is that all the exhaust comes out the back, which is very convenient. And then I moved on to this engine, which we're going to go over to the other side, though. And we're going to look at it over here. So this is my max combine engine. This is the maximum efficiency and density, like, trade-off that you can get from a fully combined engine. You can fiddle with the numbers here and there to get higher densities and less efficiencies and whatnot. But this is basically the maximum you can get of the best of all worlds. You start out at 700 power per material with 15 power per volume. And you go up to 43.3 power per volume at 509.5. This is a pretty condensed engine. It has pretty good performance. It's pretty mid, and the exhaust management is pretty simple. It just exhausts, 2 at the top, 2 at the bottom. That's fairly easy to handle. But it's not the best in all efficiency. The next engine is the best I could get for power efficiency while still having good power density. And I called it the Max Combine V2, but it's... you're going to notice its exhaust management is a lot more tricky. But you got the power material starts at 900, and then it goes to 512. So, 19 power per volume all the way up to about 43 power per volume in fairly good efficiencies. And these are engines, just single engines. So these aren't advanced engines. These are just single engine full combine engines. So this is like a combine engine. It's not like a full combine. It doesn't have injectors, does not have radiators. So this is what I got. I like this engine. It's not the greatest. I don't like it as much as I like the other engine, because the other engine I can just spam and it's pretty easy to maintain and it's good to go. But yeah, you got a 25% 900 power per material. It's a really good engine. It's really good with burst loads. You can have particle cannons, rail guns, and charging batteries with this thing, and it will handle it no problem as long as you have enough of them. And it'll have extra efficiencies because it only bursts max RPM for short periods of time. And it's got good overall efficiency. So that's where I got. And then I also built this just strictly for efficiency. I called this one the E for efficiency. It's got 1200 power per material casually on the low end. And the top end's actually not too bad either. It's 582, almost 600. And that's because I added a couple of turbos. Just a couple. I just wanted to use up the gas before it exited the vehicle since it was there. And it improved efficiency on the low end and the top end, which happens when you combine the superchargers and turbos. That just happens. So, yeah. So, power per volume sucks, but if you got lots of volume, you might as well spam a bunch of engines like this and just call it a day. Then after designing this, I went on to do a bunch of combined engines. Those are some other weird engine. This is the Intense. It was supposed to have really good density, but it's just kind of an intense thing. It's not that great. The Lop was better. I forget where it was. And this is the Pancake. It has better power density, but it's sort of like it's a full combine. It's got better power density, but its efficiency is not so great. All right. And then my piece de resistance is what I call the Chain Combine. This engine has every part in it, so it's a full combine engine, but it's 3 engines in one. So, if we go on the prefab, here, let's load the prefab. So that's the turbo. This is the Chain Combine engine. It's 1,600 materials and 170 blocks. I did the math on this. This engine configuration has an efficiency around 750 from low to top end. Well, low end's about 770. Top end's more around 750. So low end's a little bit better efficiency than top end. And the power density is somewhere between 40 and 45. So I did some of the math on it and kind of forgotten it. So this is a really good engine. It's good for burst loads and constant loads. It doesn't really care. This engine just doesn't care. It produces energy and it does it efficiently and produces plenty of it. So it's a great engine. The downside of this thing is like look at it. It's a monstrosity. Good luck. You might be able to put this like in and around turrets, for example, like in between the armor and stuff, and who knows. But you're gonna have to think about where you're putting this engine. Unlike the other engines I designed, where you can just kind of slap them anywhere and you're good to go, for the most part. And you can fix some of the exhaust too, but for exhaust management, and it doesn't really change it too much. But you can see here, if I look at this here, power per material, it's half decent. This lies though. Power per volume lies because when you do a combine engine, the weird finicky thing about it is that it considers the piping between, like, that's attached to both of the engines, the piping of this engine. So this engine typically has around 60 power per material, or sorry, power per volume. And the turbo engines, there's 2 turbo engines here. These ones have usually around 40 power per material, and you can see they have 900 for power per material. This is only at 0.5 RPM, by the way, all these engines. The top RPM, these engines have a little bit higher efficiency, and that one has lower, so they kind of even each other out. But yeah, power density is around 40 for those two, and about 60 for that. So overall, it's like 40 to 45 for the power density, because this produces more power than those do, but they kind of even each other out. Yeah, and you get really good efficiency on these engines, and decent efficiency on the low end with these engines, but the high end, it gets canceled out by the other engines more or less. Like if we put both of these to 0.1 here, and you don't have to think about it. You can just slap this configuration into a build, and you don't have to think about whether or not you have enough power for the top end or the low end. As long as you can't max out the power production of these, you're fine. As long as you have enough of them, you're fine. You don't have to worry about having too little and having your power, get dumped. You have to minimize the power RPM or whatever, or run them at max, or do any priorities. You just dump a bunch of these into a build, and you're good to go. So there we go. 777, right? That's the power per material, and we're going to see 748 on this, so around 750, right? It's about 750 across the board from low end to the top end. So I think the top end might drop down to about like 6. I think it's about like 650 maybe, but you're still getting fairly decent density and power production, and especially on the low end, you're getting really good efficiency compared to a different engine. Right? So that's everything I've got for you guys. I hope you guys go get a snack. It's been fun having you guys around. Hope you learned a few things, and adios amigos. Ciao.